they were able to basically bring it down to the nomadic roots of that society, right? I mean,
Okay.
it was a society that lived in the desert in pretty harsh conditions. There were settlements and camps. If you were trying to travel from A to B,
Yeah.
you had to make sure the conditions were such that you had to make sure that by the end of the day, by sunset, you reached a settlement,
Hmm.
and then whoever lived in that settlement had to be open to receive you. Why would they do that? I guess they did that because they then um, hoped that you would do that in return for them when they were traveling. And
Got it.
so that's how that sort of culture came about. That if somebody comes to your door, you take them in and you look after them.
Welcome to Luxury Travel Innovators. I'm your host, Adam Deflorian. Today, live at HITEC, I'm joined by Shrikant Shenoy, Chief Information and Strategy Officer of Adeera, a PIF company. Let's take off. Hi, Shrikant. Thank you so much for joining us here at Luxury Travel Innovators in Indianapolis for HITEC.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me. Look forward to a good chat this morning.
Of course. Appreciate it very much. Can you tell our listeners a little more about Adeera and what excites you about your position within the organization?
So Adeera has been set up by the Public Investment Fund, the PIF of Saudi Arabia. That's one of the main sovereign wealth funds that's driving all the economic transformation in the kingdom as the national champion hotel operator. So this is what we are here to do. We are our role in that ecosystem is to set up and run hotel brands that bring Saudi hospitality to the world. What excites me about this role? So I'm currently the Chief Information and Strategy Officer for Adeera. We are setting up from scratch. Our pipeline is, we are a greenfield operator. Our pipeline is mostly new build. So we have the opportunity to create something here without any legacy. We have this clean sheet of paper that we can draw on. So that, I think, for me is the most exciting part of this.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a little more about your background up till Adeera?
So my whole career, I've been working in technology and strategy roles, or sort of combining the two. The last 15 years, I've been involved actively in the hotel industry. So working first for Dubai Holding, which is the owner of Jumeirah, and then working for a few years within Jumeirah itself. My last role was at Langham Hospitality Group out of Hong Kong, where I was heading up again technology, strategy, and innovation. There, we there was an interesting time in Hong Kong. It straddled both the Hong Kong protests as well as COVID.
Hmm.
So we, that obviously put a few brakes on some investments during some of those periods. But I was able to get the ownership there engaged enough in our digital transformation that we were able to actually embark on quite a few initiatives that have either now been delivered or are still sort of in progress and underway. So we, revamped the whole hotel technology to move to the cloud, upgraded the digital platforms, introduced digital tools for guests to engage. So, WhatsApp and app and, so on and so forth. Relooked at our entire sort of CRM and loyalty strategy. And of course, in the last 7-8 years, we also had to really tighten up our cyber and data protection posture.
Yeah.
So it was quite exciting to do all of that, but also in many ways a little bit painful because you have 25, 30 hotels that are already there. And so you have to, the whole piece of, how do you transition from that legacy and how do you do all that change management? You want to introduce a new cloud-based PMS. Well, that's a 3 or 4 month process with each hotel where you have to, and most of that is really just the change management, right? It's about getting the people comfortable with a new way of doing things rather than the technology itself. So that's a little bit my background.
Yeah, that sounds, and a little bit of a reunion because Stefan is there as well,
Yes.
right? So at
Yes.
Adeera, that's great, and Akdan as well. So you have
Yes,
very
we have
familiar faces.
there's one or two others as well that we've brought across from Langham. Again, look, these are people that, and this is part of what's attracted me to come here as well, is the fact that we have there is a bit of familiarity with that team, and we work well together, and we know sort of how to play off each other.
Yeah. Have you ever in your career had an opportunity like this where you get to start from scratch and you don't have legacy technology that, obviously causes its own challenges to work with?
So my very first job was with an IT startup. This was an IT services company out of the UK.
Okay.
And as I like to tell my younger colleagues, this was back in the days when the internet was a startup, right? This is back in the back in sort of 99, 2000 time. But then, but this I think is very different because there we were all sort of discovering along with the whole market, the whole ecosystem. Here, having been through the journey a couple of times, we know what needs to be done, right? We know how we can do better, and we know what the constraints are. And now those constraints have been taken away. So now it's, it's a very, it's quite a unique challenge,
Mhm.
and that makes it very exciting.
Yeah. And you mentioned it is the ultimate goal, right? Is everything will be new. All the keys will be new. But are
Yeah.
you also looking at taking over and managing properties for other owners within Saudi Arabia and the region?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we were actually quite positively surprised that when the company was announced 6 months ago in December of 2024, we started getting a lot of proactive approaches from private sector owners uh, wanting to engage with us to have us manage their hotels. Now, some of these are also new builds, but there are a number of sort of conversion opportunities that we're talking about as well.
Okay.
One small barrier that we have at the moment is that our consumer-facing hotel brands haven't yet been announced,
Okay.
so the brand names are not out there,
Yep.
and along with the sort of the brand pillars and stories and so on. I think once those are out, then we will start getting even more traction.
Totally.
That growth.
Now, those, though, you might have to absorb technology that exists, or do you think that will just be sort of the approach of you will be replacing the tech in those to match up with your design, sort of architected tech stack?
So I think we will have to do both, right?
Okay.
I think in even if I am able to convince the hotel owner that they have to transition to my tech stack, which often is not so straightforward because there are costs involved, and they've made investments in what is there.
Hmm.
Um, Even if I'm able to convince them, there will be a transition period. So
Yeah.
we will need to work with what they have, at least for 6 months, a year, uh, because those transitions don't happen instantly.
Totally. Now, when I know the brands haven't been announced yet, but I assume by 2030, considering Vision 2030, you'll have some hotels live on market.
Yes.
And at that point, how many keys do you think you'll launch with, and what's the ambition in terms of total growth?
So our business plan is quite ambitious, but I think it's achievable. We aim to have within sort of the next 10 to 15 years, we aim to have around 50 to 70 hotels open
Okay.
with around 15 to 20,000 keys.
Okay.
These are the rough numbers off the top of my head. And we already have 12 of those hotels are already secured,
Okay.
which is quite remarkable considering that the brands aren't announced yet, right? So
Hmm.
we've had some confidential discussions with some of these owners about what the brands are going to look like, but it's all even with that, we've got a dozen hotels signed up. As I said, we're getting a lot of traction since the company was announced with the private sector as well. And then once the brands are announced, I think we'll be able to convert a lot more of those deals that are still in the pipeline and turn them into sort of hotels that we're going to open.
Got it. Can you tell us, and it's okay if you can't, just what levels the hotels will be? Select service, full service, ultra luxury?
So we have we will have three brands.
Okay.
One will be a luxury brand that aims to compete at the top end of the luxury market.
Okay.
Think maybe not so much Aman because those tend to be very boutique kind of properties, but more like maybe a Peninsula or a Four Seasons or a Mandarin Oriental. The second brand will be a lifestyle brand.
Okay.
It'll still be in the sort of 5-star category if we adopt those sort of labels. We're not always convinced about those labels,
Yeah.
but it won't be as luxury as the first brand, and it'll have more of a lifestyle twist of being a place for people to gather and to come together and engage on topics of common interest.
Got it.
The third brand will be an upper mid-scale select service brand. I think select service is a good descriptor for it because one of the pillars of that brand is that we don't do everything. We do a few selected things that we feel our guests value, but we do them really well.
Got it. Will, when do you suspect that the brand names will be announced?
We are hoping to announce them this year.
Okay.
But there obviously there are other stakeholders that are there are other factors at play as well. We need to sort of engage with our owners at PIF, and we need to
Mhm.
make sure that it fits in with their plans of their announcement calendars and so on and so forth. So that's what we are doing at the moment. The brands are actually more or less developed,
Okay,
and they're very exciting.
that's great.
I think people will really people will really be sort of wowed by them when they're launched.
That's great. Did you guys develop them in house, or did you bring on an international agency to help brand them, or how did you do that?
So of course we brought in an international agency because there is a lot of groundwork that needs to be done when it
Yeah.
comes to building up these brands and so on. The soul of the brand, I would say, belongs in house.
Okay.
We have a brands team. Our chief brands officer is a Saudi gentleman who's worked his whole career in this sort of industry,
Okay.
in the branding industry. I mean,
Hmm.
and so he and his team, I think, have been custodians of that story of how we are going to bring Saudi hospitality to the world.
Okay.
But then to sort of put the, to take that framework, to take that spirit, and then put a story around it, and to sort of flesh it out. Of course, we've had a branding agency that supported us.
Yeah, makes sense. You've mentioned Saudi hospitality a few times, and I'm curious, with concepts and values like al-Tarhib and other things, what is, for my listeners, what does Saudi hospitality mean to you, and sort of what do you want the world to feel and experience by Saudi hospitality?
This is something that we talked about when we were debating the brands and going through those exercises, right? I mean, in terms of
Hmm.
what does this mean? So for me personally, I was engaging. I was talking about this role with Stefan and with some of the other leaders, sort of late 2023,
Hmm.
and so at that time I said, look, you want me to come and work and live in Riyadh? I have to come and see the city first. I'm hearing about this transformation and all of that, but I have to come and experience it for myself before I sign up.
Yeah.
So I made a trip here to Riyadh, and I was honestly blown away. I had a certain perception of what it was going to be like to be in Riyadh,
Yeah.
of what Saudi people were like, probably shaped, you know, uh, in fairness, by what I see in you know what we see in sort of bad Netflix series and in the news media and so on.
Hmm.
And what I experienced was the polar opposite. The people were very friendly, uh, to the point of nothing is too much trouble. I witnessed, for example, I was staying in a Marriott hotel. There was at breakfast, I witnessed an expat lady talking about an expat lady asking a Saudi lady, hey, your abaya is really nice. Where did you get it? And that turned into a conversation where the Saudi lady was inviting this expat lady home to come and have coffee with her, and then I take you to the abaya shop, and it was that generosity is it feels it would feel over the top if it wasn't so genuine,
Yeah.
right? And
Authentic.
yeah, if it wasn't so authentic. So that really is what we want, and this is something that it's not just examples, it's not just the odd anecdote. This is something that you experience on a fairly consistent basis.
Oh wow.
It's a simple thing. I mean, going for lunch with Saudi colleagues, we are all prepared for that fight at the end about who's going to pay the bill, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always it always ends up with that argument saying no, and you have to sort of so it's these kind of things that are really the people live. It's part of their culture. It's part of their DNA. What we're trying to figure out is how we can sort of almost bottle that and bring that into a professional hospitality setting.
Well, and it sounds like the sort of the foundation is there, right? The
Yeah,
genuine authenticity of the people is what you want in hospitality, right?
yeah,
That's the definition of hospitality, and so it sounds like that's a great place to start.
yeah,
And then it's just to finding and figuring out what the pull is, which you guys are obviously working on in order to integrate it into the entire sort of Adeera.
yeah. And I mean, maybe just a moment to go a little bit deeper into the roots of that, right? I
Yeah,
mean, this is something that our team explored as well to say, where does this innate culture come from?
yeah,
And I think in the end, after a lot of research, they were able to they were able to basically bring it down to the nomadic roots of that society, right? I mean,
Okay.
it was a society that lived in the desert in pretty harsh conditions. There were settlements and camps. If you were trying to travel from A to B,
Yeah.
um, you had to make sure the conditions were such that you had to make sure that by the end of the day, by sunset, you reached a settlement,
Hmm.
and then whoever lived in that settlement had to be open to receive you and to
Right.
host you and to have you stay in their house and to feed you and to look after you.
Yeah.
If not, then in those desert conditions you wouldn't survive, right? I mean,
Right.
this is the thing. And why would they do that? I guess they did that because they then hoped that you would do that in return for them when they were traveling. And
Got it.
so that's how that sort of culture came about, that if somebody comes to your door, you take them in and you look after them.
Great. Great culture. Can you tell us a little more about Vision 2030 and what part Adeera plays in the overall strategy? I mean, we hear a lot about Vision 2030 and PIF in general around its impact on Vision 2030. So, would love to hear more about that.
So Vision 2030 is this, I guess, it's this sort of strategy to transform the economy and the society of the kingdom, right? I
Okay.
think at a very high level, the main goals are to transform the economy so that it's not dependent on the oil revenue as the primary source of income anymore.
Okay.
To diversify and create other sectors, and a second goal is of course the social transformation, to enable that economic transformation by harnessing the untapped potential of the young population and also of the female population of the kingdom that historically hasn't been engaged in the workforce as much. So tourism is one of the main pillar sectors of that. There are various other sectors that are also being focused on, but tourism is one that is a key focus, and that's because of, I think, three sort of quite related reasons. One is, of course, GDP contribution.
Hmm.
Tourism is expected to be one of the bigger sectors in terms of non-oil GDP, especially once many of these giga projects are delivered and able to attract tourists. Um, and there, actually, one of the sort of underlying foundational elements that exists there is that you have a lot of Saudis who do um, today or historically spend a lot of their entertainment money abroad. They go outside to get their entertainment. And if you create the attractions and create the destinations for them at home, but in addition to the GDP contribution, tourism is also a great sector for employment. As if you compare it to many other sectors, whether it's heavy industry and so on and so on, per dollar of GDP, tourism tends to generate more jobs, and more jobs that are accessible in terms of not requiring sort of advanced study and qualifications and these kind of things. So that is a second driver, and then the third driver, of course, is perception. Because what better way to change perceptions about the kingdom than to attract people to come and visit those tourist destinations and to experience uh, Saudi and its hospitality for themselves.
Yeah.
And there, I should also say a little bit about something about the geography of Saudi Arabia, right? I mean, this was something that blew me away as well when I was doing my research. Of course, you see it on the map and you see it's a big country.
Yeah.
But my rather uneducated perception before perhaps was, when you think about Saudi Arabia, you think of desert, right? You think of sand. But actually, it's a country of about 2.2 million square kilometers. That's about a quarter of the size of the US in terms of land area. There is a mountainous region in the southwest where in the summer, in July, August, the temperatures won't go above 25 degrees Celsius.
Oh, wow.
There is beautiful diving in the Red Sea. And there are mountains in the north where you can ski in the winter. So there is a lot of geographical diversity that is unknown, right, and undiscovered.
Yeah.
And this is something that hopefully will make that tourism proposition quite attractive as well.
Yeah, because you have very lofty goals, right? What are the tourism number goals that, in terms of number of tourists, that you guys want to achieve for Vision 2030?
So the Vision 2030 goal initially was actually to have 100 million tourists. That includes domestic tourism, and I think it also includes the religious tourism as well.
Okay.
The 100, that was that, it turns out, wasn't ambitious enough because we crossed 100 million last year.
Okay.
So now they've reset the goal for 2030 to 150 million.
Okay, got it. And the goal, annually, right? You want to be in the consideration set from the global tourism perspective of travelers globally to the same extent of France, Italy, Spain, all of the sort of key tourism countries, right? In terms of volume.
Yes, I think we believe that the kingdom has a lot to offer
Yep.
for a tourist, and so I think the medium to long term, I think we can definitely play in that set from a geographical offering, from a cultural, from a hospitality offering. I think the foundations are there. There are, of course, things that we need to build out first. We need to build
Yeah.
out that the tourism infrastructure. Just before we started this conversation, we were talking about the airlift with Riyadh Air.
Yeah.
So that needs to come in as well, in terms of people being able to come, travel freely into the kingdom. This is one of the things that I think will really make a big difference when Riyadh Air has sort of achieved that critical mass, and they are able to address that airlift issue.
Yeah.
That when you're able to plan a trip either to the kingdom or within the kingdom, without having to think about, okay, what day are there flights available to go here, and without that being a factor, when you're able to say, okay, I want to go on that date and I want to come back on that date, and flights are there and I can just book them. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, makes total sense. Congratulations, by the way, on already hitting 100 million tourists, and you haven't even announced the brands yet. That's very impressive. Can you tell us a little about those giga projects? Like what level of completion? I mean, you have to be exact, but are they in, and are they where the majority of the tourists are already going, or?
The giga projects, so some of the projects already have launched certain product, mostly hotels,
Okay.
into the market. So you have the Red Sea that has announced some of those beautiful resorts. You have Neom, which soft launched one of their resorts, but now they're sort of building out more infrastructure before they launch more things into the market. Diraya is probably the most advanced one. They have launched their sort of the Bujeri Terrace, which is a sort of F&B destination.
Okay.
Beautiful. If you come to Riyadh, you should definitely visit that. And it also has a little bit there about the history of the origins of the Saudi kingdom, of the Saudi ruling family, and the Saudi Arabian kingdom there. Qiddiya is under development. We expect that they should reach a critical mass with a number of hotels and maybe the first theme parks open within the next couple of years. There, they of course have also a hard target to hit. That I think it was announced after the Saudi Grand Prix this year that in 2029, I think it was going to be held in.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the Formula One circuit is a part of what they're building there. Some of the concepts I've seen there are pretty cool, pretty crazy. You could be on your sort of roller coaster hanging upside down and going over the Formula One circuit, and it's they're doing some very interesting things there. That should be quite exciting for tourists. In terms of the other projects or destinations, you have Al Ula, which is also, there is some infrastructure there already. There are some hotels there, and it's attracting some visitors, and there are some great events there as well that happen from time to time through the year. So various destinations are being developed. I would say today a bulk of the travel is happening probably to the existing destinations, so to the religious cities, and then to places like Riyadh and Jeddah, and Dammam, and so on. A lot of this travel today is also probably business travel and religious travel rather than purely leisure travel.
Okay.
But within the kingdom, so the domestic leisure travel is starting to tick up.
Okay.
And I think as we develop these destinations, that will only increase over time.
Yeah, makes sense. Can you tell us a little bit about the thinking behind? So, Adeera is created to manage properties on behalf of owners, as well as, I'm sure, assets that PIF already wholly owns or will wholly own once it's developed. Rather than bringing in other hotel management companies, which I know is part of it, there's plenty of brands that have announced in the Giga projects, et cetera,
Yes.
most of our customers, et cetera. What was the thinking behind creating your own management company?
I should start by quoting Stefan, my boss.
Hmm.
He says this at least 4 or 5 times a week, that the world doesn't need yet another hotel operator or yet another hotel brand. So our mandate and our purpose very clearly is to bring that Saudi hospitality to the world. So that really is something that we almost have to ask ourselves every time we are sort of making a critical decision to say, are we going down the route of being yet another hotel brand in quite a crowded marketplace, or are we really standing true to that mandate and that ethos? And that, of course, has two sides. One side is from a guest experience perspective to deliver that Saudi hospitality, but the other side is also to be that beacon that it makes hospitality an attractive industry for young Saudis to work in. Because I mean, you said earlier that hospitality is innate in them, and that's what makes it authentic, right? But
Yeah.
then I have to have that young Saudi, that I have to have that Saudi person hosting the guest and delivering that hospitality to the guest.
Yeah.
And today, while the people are incredibly generous and hospitable in their private lives, the hospitality industry um, is not one that is an obvious choice for them to work in, and we need to sort of make those careers more appealing to them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not necessarily getting started in hospitality isn't necessarily glamorous, right? So you have to figure
Exactly.
out how to,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm sure, especially with the younger population, as anywhere in the world, that's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
So it's an uphill battle. I'd love to hear a little more about your take on AI and how you think you'll leverage it at Adeera and sort of where you see the industry going in terms of AI, especially at the rapid pace, right, that we see advancement in this. I mean, it's no longer what we look at over 12 months or 24 months, but
Yeah.
3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
more.
So AI is, of course, an integral part of any tech strategy. We have to take into account how we can use AI to turbocharge everything that we're doing. And as you said, things are moving so fast. I remember having a conversation a few months ago um with somebody who works for a Saudi AI company that has now been folded into the newly announced AI champion, Humane,
Hmm.
who was talking about legacy AI, and I was like, okay, my God, this is crazy, right? I mean, this technology, which was not, um, which was not even on most people's radars 3 years ago,
Yeah.
is now people are talking about legacy versions of it. So how are we going to use it? We're going to use it to tailor our guest experience and to really make it more personal and more contextual. We will use it. Um, if you choose to use self-service, then great. We will be able to deliver that personalization into those tools and so on. But we also want to make sure that we can deliver that to our colleagues. So when you go to especially to maybe one of our luxury hotels, our primary mode of service will still be personal. We will not expect you to pick up the phone and do things through an app or any of that sort of stuff. We will uh, still have people interact with you if you choose. And this is something that a lot of people in Saudi prefer to do, is to be on WhatsApp, is to communicate using WhatsApp. We will give you the number of a host who is looking after you, who you can communicate with over WhatsApp. But behind the scenes, empowering those colleagues will be a lot of AI that helps them to answer questions that you have, or helps based on your preferences and based on
Absolutely.
what you've asked for in the past, or will help them, when they see you, to recognize you and to have a more meaningful conversation with you. So this is one of the areas where we see AI playing a big role in terms of personalizing and streamlining those communications a lot more. Um, in terms of the back of house, we want to aggressively automate things there.
Hmm.
Here, because of the greenfield nature, because we don't have hotels operating yet, we have the luxury to be able to do that a little bit, right? Because
Hmm.
once you have an established process and a way of doing things and a team in place, then it's much harder to bring about that change. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're doing it from scratch, you have this window where you can sort of try and put in place some of those new transformed processes.
Hmm.
So we're very actively engaged with our finance, with our CFO, with our head of HR, and so on, in terms of how we work those processes to really automate them in a way that makes them faster, but also more robust. That if you have the right technology in the background to run the process and to handle the errors and the exceptions, then not having human hands should make it more robust from a controls perspective. And then, of course, I mentioned the staff in terms of delivering the guest journey. So we want to deliver similar tools for our staff um, to be able to do their work, right?
Okay.
So um, I talked earlier about the challenge of attracting young Saudis, or actually young people of any nationality into our industry. One of the things that I would like to do to help there is to uh, provide a very simple interface for them to work, so that
Yeah.
when we're hiring someone, they don't have to sit in 2 weeks of classroom training of how to learn how to use their system.
Yeah.
For most people, it should be something that you're able to capture in a simple tablet kind of interface,
Totally.
where you're able to be up and running with, let's say, half a day of training. So a few hours instead of a few days or a few weeks. And then if you keep that experience simple, so you have all your features, the common features that you need, the key information that you need in one place. You have maybe a simple chatbot that, if you have any questions of how to do something, you can just ask, and it'll, you don't have to go and search through an SOP library or whatever
Mhm.
that is. Uh, that hopefully also helps us with retention.
Yeah.
And then if somebody wants to take on a more specialized role, if they, that requires that more detailed knowledge, sure, they can then be trained further. But why do I need to have that as a barrier when people are coming into the industry? That they need to then sit there and, figure out how to use sort of keyboard shortcuts and whatnot
Totally.
for 2 weeks. So this is what we are trying to do. This is something also that we hope AI will help us to do. Now, we talked also about the rapid pace of AI,
Yeah.
right? And this is something that we talk about all the time because, of course, we have all of these great ideas, but our first hotels, our first branded hotels are probably going to open not for another maybe year and a half.
Hmm.
And, who knows where that technology is going to go between now and then. So we are also looking at some of the fundamental sort of the underlying infrastructure. And by that, I mean things like our data structures, how
Yeah.
we're going to set those up, how we're going to set up, the basics of the connectivity and the wiring in our hotels, that as the technology improves, there may be more and more transactions, there may be more data flowing around the networks. How do we make sure that we set up the physical networks that can handle that? How do we make sure that we set up our architecture? And the foundation of that for me is the data structures in such a way that, if the technology evolves and we need to swap out, as that Saudi gentleman put it, the legacy AI model for a new AI model, at least we have the data in place and we have it structured in a very robust way that we're able to, then these becomes just tools that we can swap in and out. So that's something that we are thinking about as well. And then I think the other sort of potential uh, pitfall that we all need to watch out for with AI is, in terms of how much is it actually delivered, right? I mean,
Yeah.
um, I'm sure as we walk the exhibition floor in HITEC, there will be a lot of companies that claim to use AI,
Yeah.
and many of them will have applied it in a you know in a way that sort of makes sense. But essentially, I think we need to be focused on what we expect the AI to give us. What is the use case, and does it really answer that use case,
Yeah.
and has it gone beyond the marketing material and into the actual technology?
Exactly.
I think many years back, this was before ChatGPT, but one of my friends had sent me a meme that said, if it's written in Python, it's machine learning. If it's written in PowerPoint, it's AI.
Exactly. And that's what it feels like, because everybody announces this is new, this is powered by AI. It's like, no, it's not actually AI, right?
Yeah.
It's being used as from a marketing perspective. I think some of it comes out of fear of being left behind,
Yes.
fear of that if they don't announce something this year, that they're going to be left in the dust. But I'm under my perspective is do it well, have actual AI and modeling that works
Yeah.
and is like to your point, right? It's using AI to be more efficient in ways that AI will be productive.
Yeah.
But if you're just announcing it because it's you need to, then you're missing the mark, you
Yeah,
know? And
it's
I'm
all
sure we'll
about
see a lot of that this
yeah,
week.
it's all about what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and
Exactly.
then is the technology actually solving that problem? And then I'm almost indifferent to whether it uses AI or not. Now, I believe that
Yeah.
actually that if the technology uses AI, then over time it is going to solve the problem better and more efficiently.
Right.
But for me, it's more about solving the problem rather than the underlying
The
technology.
age-old reason you use technology, right? You
Yeah,
don't just use technology for technology's sake, but
yeah,
rather you use technology to solve a problem. And typically in business, right, a business problem that needs to
yeah,
be efficiently solved. It's also interesting if I think about the Giga projects and the kingdom as a whole, the opportunity here to actually use AI and natural language as well as agentic AI to be able to sort of tell the AI agent, what you're looking for, what you like.
yes,
And ideally, with time, it will know more about you, your family, what type of travel you like, the ages of your children, the type of
yeah,
stuffed animals, et cetera, right? A hyper personalized approach, which
yes,
we've been able to do with CDP and good CRM data for a long time, but be able to gather that information, and to your point, all of the way that the data architecture is configured, and then be able to ask where you want to go. Is it theme parks, right? Is
yeah,
it sort of a historic look at the kingdom? Is it the modern, incredible, modern architecture, et cetera, in Riyadh? Like,
right,
what is it, right?
right.
And
Or is
so
it?
to be able to naturally type that
Yeah,
and book.
and one of the talks that I attended yesterday at the conference um, was about digital with decentralized identities and so on. But one of the key points that one of the speakers made was that nobody books a flight or a hotel. People plan a trip,
Yeah.
right? It's just that the way that our technology is set up in our industry today, we force them to book a flight and then book a hotel and then
Yeah.
book their experiences in in Saudi Arabia as a leisure destination. So I talked about us as Adeera having a clean sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Actually, Saudi Arabia as a leisure destination also has that clean sheet of paper, right? We're
Yeah.
creating everything almost from scratch. So there is a unique opportunity there. Uh, we're engaging in some early conversations with some of our other ecosystem partners
Hmm.
about how we can sort of bring this together. Things like data sharing, of course, we have to tread a little bit more carefully to make sure that we have the right level, right consent behind it, and when it comes to sharing customer data with our ecosystem partners. Uh, but we are definitely engaged in looking at ways that we can stitch a much more cohesive experience for our guests. So if you're coming to Saudi Arabia, you know, maybe you want to, maybe your trip scenario is that you're coming to watch, your kid loves football and he wants to go and watch Cristiano Ronaldo play. So you should be able to go to the ticket booking site, book the ticket, and then add your hotel to the shopping cart and add your flights to the shopping cart,
Yeah.
and maybe your airport pickup if you want to do that, or and
Yeah.
other things to do in Riyadh at the time. And so you should be able to put all of that together
Hmm.
in a much easier fashion than you would be able to today.
Yeah, it's not pleasant today. Can you tell us a little bit about Humane? You mentioned it a minute ago.
Yeah.
What's the goal? What's Humane?
So the kingdom through various entities. So there were a couple of PIF owned entities.
Mhm.
There was a quite a significant digital arm in Aramco, the big
Yeah,
national oil company, and a few other ecosystem players in the AI sector. So Humane has brought all of these resources together and injected another big chunk of investment. So I think when they announced, they said there was a $40 billion investment behind it, and a significant chunk of that was already announced as there was a deal with Nvidia to uh, procure some of their hardware and to set up a massive AI data center in the kingdom. I think the strategy behind it is that PIF and the government sees AI as a critical sector,
yeah,
as a sector that the kingdom needs to have a foothold in, as a sector that the kingdom needs to have a strong presence in.
hmm,
And I think Humane has been set up to basically focus all of those resources and investments together into one entity and then make sure that it's all channeled in the right direction.
Yeah. And then from a data center perspective, is there a approach within Humane and PIF in general to look at data centers and creation of those data centers to power all of this AI, or will you leverage what's happening in UAE and neighboring countries? Or
No, I think there the approach very much is to create the infrastructure in the kingdom.
okay,
Um, the so and this is written into law now, right? So
yeah,
in September last year, the personal data protection legislation came into force,
okay,
and this actually requires that personal data and sensitive data is hosted in country. Um, so with that as a starting point, when we look at solutions, for example, we are looking at things that can be hosted in country,
hmm,
or um, in some cases uh, we make exceptions where for the short term, but with the understanding that our partner will then move that hosting to the kingdom within a sort of defined
yeah,
period of time. So the focus very much is on making sure that that infrastructure is built in country.
hmm,
I think, and rightly, I think, and as many other jurisdictions do as well today, the kingdom sees its data as a critical resource,
yeah,
and yeah, so therefore wants to have that.
makes sense. My last question before we do the rapid fire close is, you obviously said you visited Riyadh before you chose to begin your current opportunity with Adeera as CIO. And if you were to tell our listeners, right, because I'm sure we have many that are either already planning to visit Riyadh or will be visiting in the next 12 months. Um, you said it was different than your expectations.
Yeah,
How so? What do you want people to know about when you plan a trip and are going to Riyadh? Like what's the experience like there?
some of the things that were different compared to my perception. So um, the climate
Okay.
is surprisingly a lot more pleasant than I expected.
Okay.
Um, the summers are hot, but there is no humidity. Um, the winters are actually quite chilly.
Okay.
So you have actually seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas sometimes, in other parts of the Middle East, it can feel, or for example, when I've been in Singapore, sometimes you can't tell the difference whether it's June or December, right? It's
Yeah.
quite a uniform climate throughout the year. Here, you actually have seasons. In the winter, it gets quite chilly. You need to break out the sweaters and the jackets and so on. There are days when it rains as well. From that was a surprise for me. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, a woman in Saudi Arabia would have to sort of cover her head. She would have to wear the abaya. Now that expectation is no longer there. There is sort of it's you're quite free in terms of how you choose to dress, as long as, and this expectation applies to men and to women, as long as you're reasonably modest. In terms of the other thing that surprised me was how friendly the people are. I think we've sort of talked about this quite extensively before, but it really is. I mean, and it's not just my Saudi colleagues that I work with or people that I engage with from a professional perspective. I go to the supermarket. There is a Saudi lady sitting at the checkout. And as part of her checkout process, she asked me for my phone number to enter the loyalty points. And I try to tell her in Arabic, and she has a giggle and she laughs, and then she says, okay, I tell you in English to make sure that you gave it correctly. And you have these sort of little moments and these little friendly conversations. At least from my point of reference, I have more of those in Riyadh than I did in Hong Kong or in Dubai.
Okay.
Right, that's just from my frame of experience. The traffic is a little bit crazy, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
something that if you're visiting Riyadh, you just need to be prepared for. I think compared to many other expat cities like Dubai or a Singapore or a Hong Kong, Riyadh it it feels a lot more real in a sense, because Dubai, for example, uh, if you're in a coffee shop or if you're in a restaurant or in any of those sort of service situations, you typically wouldn't be getting served by a local, because the Emiratis don't do those jobs. You would sometimes, if it's their own business or something like this, but it wouldn't be a very common occurrence.
Okay.
Whereas in Riyadh, we had a beautiful coffee shop next to our office, which is a company called Jazeen, which is the Saudi coffee company. It's another PIF
Okay.
company. Um, and they had this coffee shop, and they had all of these the exact people that we want to recruit into our industry, right? The young Saudis with a little bit of personality and friendly, and you could go and have a conversation with them, and after the second or third day they would remember your coffee order, and
Yeah.
there was these kind of little interactions that really were a positive surprise for me. And then I think the other thing that um, my family and I are getting used to is just the fact that it's a late night city, right? I mean,
Hmm.
um, you will find that not a lot. So people, of course, go to work and so on, but
Yeah.
otherwise, before sort of the late afternoon, not a lot happens. Even there's a lot
Hmm.
of restaurants that will open for lunch around 1:30 or 2 in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
But then you could be out on the roads at 10:30 or 11 at night, and it'll be chock full of traffic, and people will be going out and about. And I guess that's just a response to the heat of the day,
Right.
right? But that's the rhythm uh, at which those people operate.
Interesting. Interesting. So, as always, I love to finish with 3 rapid fire questions.
Yes.
So, what personal travel are you most excited about next?
So in less than a month, I'm going with my wife and daughter to Kenya, where so we have some relatives there, but we're also going on a 4-day safari,
Oh, wow.
and it's supposed to be the migration season. I've been once on safari in Africa before, but neither my wife nor our 12-year-old daughter have ever been to Africa or uh, seen those the big five, or those
Yeah.
animals. So I think that should be a very exciting trip. We're really looking forward to it.
Sounds great. Yeah, actually, that's funny. I've had a few guests recently who have either come back from safari or are going on safari,
Right.
and I've heard nothing but amazing things. So
Yeah.
that sounds like fun. What do you miss about the glamorous days of travel? Basically, the whole point of the podcast is innovation and forward looking. Of course,
Yeah.
we touched on AI and where the industry is going.
Yeah.
But for this question, I like to step back for a moment and think about, travel used to be simpler. What do you miss?
That's a great question, and I was reflecting on that, and I tried to come up with something that I missed, right? But I don't think. I think travel has changed and evolved, and
Hmm.
I think it's evolved for the better. I think it's become more accessible. I think COVID maybe put a bit of a dent, a bit of a kink in that. That it made it inaccessible for a while for some people, but
Hmm.
travel is in general more accessible. There is more information out there, so I can be more aware of what I'm booking. I'm not booking a hotel or a flight, and it's rolling the dice, and I'm hoping that I end up somewhere good. I can see photos, I can see
True.
reviews, so I can tailor my own experience a lot more. And for me, I actually enjoy that. So I don't. So yeah, I tried to think about what it is about travel maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago that I miss today, and honestly,
Nothing.
I couldn't come up with a lot. Yeah,
Fair enough. Fair enough. And then the opposite of that, forward looking, and this
yeah.
doesn't have to be about technology. In fact, most of our guests have not had necessarily something around technology. What do you think's missing today? What piece of innovation in travel would make travel better? You said it's great and it's continuously evolving. So
Yeah.
what would you hope exists?
I don't know if this is terribly innovative, because there are other industries that already do this, and they do this very well, and other digital platforms and so on.
Hmm?
But I think the big thing that can really make travel much better, but also shouldn't be that hard to deliver, is just to make the whole experience more cohesive.
Yeah.
Right? Um, I don't go to Amazon.com and buy something and then go to AmazonDelivery.com to manage the delivery of that. Or it all happens on one platform in
Yeah.
one seamless transaction and experience, and it's all there. And if I want to go and buy the same thing again, it's already there. I can easily find it. I can just say buy again. I don't have to enter my payment details every time I, go and buy something. It's there. It's stored. They manage all of that. They take away a lot of those frictions away from the interaction. As an industry, we are overly reliant on these marketing emails or these one-off sort of
Yeah.
marketing blasts. Whereas I would at least, as a customer, feel much more engaged if there was an ongoing conversation with the provider that was helping me solve my travel needs, and then gave me prompts and nudges to say, "Hey, have you thought about doing this? Or have you thought about, hey, we have this a great deal on offer right now. Would you like to make a booking? It's if that can be managed. So if we can take away a lot of those discontinuities from the experience and make it a much more cohesive and integrated experience for our guests, I think that would be a big thing. I as a
Yeah.
traveler would definitely love that.
Yeah, I mean, and you said it earlier, right? You don't book things individually, right? It's just the way we've trained the guests.
Yes.
You book a trip, which
Yeah.
includes all of the components, whether it's flight, hotel, experiences. There's just no way to do it well right now.
Yeah.
Totally. Thanks for enjoy high tech.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for watching this episode of Luxury Travel Innovators. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. See you next time.